Hi everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Hopefully this time I've got some of the bugs ironed out. I won't get quite as distracted and confused by all the chat, but thank you so much for being here just to talk about modelling, which is what we're all here about. I did remember to turn the mic on, and every time I want to look at my screen I have to turn slightly sideways, so sorry about that. And I feel like I've got jaundice this evening because the lights just aren't really set up in this room, and I've moved rooms because last time it was suggested that trying to model and talk and check chat isn't really very feasible, and everybody's right. I just struggled to do anything except kind of keep up with the chat. So this time we're trying a new plan, and I'm going to put a video on in the background of the work I did on the Dagobah swamp diorama, which is what we're here tonight to do. But first, let's just say hello to everybody in the chat. Ha! It's great, the mic is working and everybody seems to have noticed that I've gone live. So that's at least a plus point. I don't know about you, but talking to a camera and then having a slight lag on the chat and everything else takes a bit of getting used to. But it is so great to actually get feedback from people and to have kind of the chat going and to hear what you all think. So if you've got any questions, please throw them up there. If I miss anything, then write question at the front in big letters. And I have 3 moderators this time who are going to help. You know, it's going to be a really big help having them on the chat. So thanks to Digger, Timber and Norm, who've all volunteered and who are there. So if you see their names, I think they're in blue, so you can tell that they're the moderators. Well, they're in blue for me. So if they say anything, you know, they're helping out. So first up, busy couple of weeks, and I thought about how much to do on the Dagobah swamp diorama because this time I'm doing the base. And to be honest, I didn't finish it. And one of the reasons was I decided that between all of these, I'd get a sort of look at how much I could get done in 2 days. And I didn't want to spend ages on it, and then it doesn't seem like a live stream where you're really going through what I could model achieve. So let's just have a quick look at the chat. Sound and picture out of sync. Oh, that is a real pain. So on my last one, I used my iPhone for the face, and that worked fine with a separate mic. And I was on my MacBook Pro, but it's really small and hard to see everything. On this one, I've got it through my big camera, like the DSLR, and it's plugged in a different route. And I had it last time for looking at the desk, but when I put it on here, for some reason, it does go out of sync slightly. And sometimes it's in sync though, so I don't know what to do about it. So I'm going to be really small for most of this, I hope, so you can see what I was doing in the week. So let's just hope the lip syncing doesn't get too bad. But I couldn't get the iPhone to talk to the Mac through OBS. So it will only put me this way up. It won't put me on the side because it doesn't recognize the USB connection. It's just really confusing. So let's have let's have a look. Admiral Belzadil. Yes, this is my bookcase. I don't normally do this angle because I don't think the setup's not there normally. I'm normally in the other room, but I'm not lugging 2 monitors and everything else into the other room just to do a live stream. So this is my normal setup, and I do need to just work it out. I need to get better lighting, I think, in here because there's a lot of overhead lights that are incandescent plus an LED light for me, and it's just throwing all the colours out. Let's have a look else. Everyone else saying hello. Don't forget the likes. Yes, hi. It's supposed to be working night shift. Oh no, I hope, Stephen, I hope Mary's okay and you're not at accident and emergency all night. Do I look weird? Do I look yellow? I can't work this out. There's definitely something about the lighting in this room, and I've only got so many lights that will fit in the very small space behind the camera. So I definitely will fix it. Yeah, thanks Norman. I don't know what to do though, because sometimes I test and it's perfectly in sync, and other times I test and it's not in sync. So it's not constantly doing it, which makes it really hard to fix. Michigan, USA, and I'm coming through fine. So that's good. Brilliant. Super. So it is a nice mic. It's a Blue Yeti mic, and I've got it on one of those little boom arms, and it sits here. It's what I do my voiceovers on. So it's a really nice mic. So at least the sound is good. Am I going to be small, like mini Catty small? Probably not that small, but definitely I'm going to be a little box in the corner when I get the video going. Try increasing your playback speed to 1.25. Mark, I'll have a look at it after the stream. I don't think now is the time. As OBS does have a bad habit of crashing on me. It's crashed like 3 or 4 times on the other one, and it crashed once just before I went live here. So I don't like to change too much on it whilst it's going. So North Carolina, so it's good in the US, great. But someone else has got it way out. I don't understand this, and I don't understand why it's different for different people. Anybody who knows anything about OBS, feel free to drop me a DM or something afterwards to explain how to fix it. Do I look a bit tanned? I actually did a custom white balance and I looked like a Martian. I went bright green. So I went back just to the, I think this is Flash, the white balance, which was better than the automatic. It looks like a warm light. Okay, so it's interesting. Bit red orange. Okay, softly lit, so that's good. Have you tried 3D hologram? No, I haven't, but I'd love to. I really would. Thanks, Stephen. I'm glad she's better. Getting anyone to sit still is not easy. So I wondered about the reason it's set on 1920, so that's HD, because I want people to be able to see what I'm doing when I'm doing the modelling in quite reasonable definition. So I think with OBS, if I drop the steam rate down for one part, it drops the whole lot. And that's the problem I have. So we'll see. Most people seem to be all right. So there we go. Right, so enough about technical issues. Let's get going with talking about the modelling. So as I said, I spent 2 days just producing the base. And I'll talk through it, I'll leave it going in the background. And if you want to ask me questions about how I do generally bases or anything like that, then pop them up on the chat and I'll answer them as we go. But actually, before we start, I missed the Hornby Day today at 3 o'clock because I have to admit that I was, this is going to be very sad. I was playing Mass Effect Andromeda, so I didn't actually watch myself. I hadn't realised what time I was going to be on. They said they sent an email, and then I think it was actually at the front and I didn't see that. So I missed that I was on, I missed the live chat. So if there are any questions or anybody had any comments on, saw the Hornby one I did earlier. I was talking about burnout and doing your hobby as a job, which is obviously really dear to me as I do my hobby as a job. If anyone has any questions about that, then please do put it in the chat, because I didn't really get any feedback and I can't play back the live chat to look for it. But I was sitting there kind of thinking afterwards, all I did was really talk about how bad it is burning out, which I don't know if that was helpful for a mental health day, but anyway, it's mental health awareness and it is good to talk about it. So feel free to drop that in the chat if it's an issue. Right, I am going to, first of all, put this on to remind everybody that this is the stream that we're doing. It's the Dagobah swamp. Okay, so it's basically Luke having a bit of a mope. He does mope a lot, doesn't he? Because he can't get X-Wing out the water. Once he's got the X-Wing out the water, you know, he still mopes. But Yoda just proves to him with that classic phrase, do not, there is no try, that you can get the X-Wing out, no problem. And what I want to do is the moment where it's just left the water and it's hanging in mid-air and it's just about to fly in and park up and then drip. So there's water gushing off it, more than in the movie, because they did say they ran out of just special effects ability to do it. So there's more water than perhaps in the movie. They don't really show a lot. And there's going to be loads of seaweed and stuff dripping down as well. So it's going to be a really fascinating just scene to do, I think, because not only have we got those lovely trees in the background, we see shots of them here, we've also got water effects, and then we've got the X-Wing itself to build. So just going back to chat for a second. Yes, Tim, I decided I'd have a weekend off. So I haven't modelled this weekend. I have done a couple of bits of work, but no modelling. And I was following my own advice, probably for the first time this year almost. So I felt guilty, but I ploughed through. Yeah, okay. I can put that to play again whilst I just check on the chat. Thanks, Andy, who thought it was really informative and very good. Makes you think. I've done a lot of self-evaluation about doing this and realised I need to balance work-life, and hobbies always were my outlet and they're not anymore because they become more of a pressure. So I'm looking very much at how I deal with that, and I just, if it's a hobby, make sure it's a hobby and you enjoy it. And if it doesn't give you pleasure, don't do it. Sorry, Norm, but we have to see what Kathy's doing this time. We're doing the base, and I'm about to put it on. So, with not much ado, let's just put on. What is it doing? I'm just going to have a play because it doesn't seem to like to do what I want it to do. Hang on. Browse. I've got to love. No. Where is it? It's on 2. I've lost my video. OBS is a bit funny. I set up before the stream. I put on this second one of Dagobah, and it's lost my first one. Oh well. Here we go. There we go. That's a lot better. So this is the movie that I want to show you. So first up, I just wanted to show you that I've actually done these Celluclay trees before. I've done them twice. Once on this halo diorama years ago. So, you know, it worked well. I know it works well at this sort of size and scale. And also then once on the same scale, these are both 6 scale. This is 1/48, but the trees are bigger. And this was these were figures that I bought and I wanted to put them onto something. So I wanted to do a Celluclay sort of withered tree at the top of this rock face. So again, I've done these this method before slightly differently with a lot of jute string and sort of a base underneath. So I know this method's going to work. So I'm going to take you through the method in a second, but I'm just going to quickly run through what I did the last couple of times. If you haven't seen Star Wars recently, I rewatched them all not that long ago, and I enjoy them more and more every time I watch them. This is a sped up one from ages ago, and I was looking at it going, gosh, this is probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago now. And it had a very different style of video to what I currently do. It was a lot more of me in it, and this is so tall you don't really have a choice. It was just so difficult to get all of this in camera shot. So the key thing with Celluclay, which is one of the main ingredients, I just need to talk a bit about it. It's quirky. It doesn't really, it has its moments and it will crack easily. And one thing you can do to stop that is to put PVA glue in it. PVA glue is great for stopping everything from tar grout, Celluclay, plaster, whatever it is, from cracking. And I tend to add PVA glue to everything as a result. Any scenery that I'm doing, if I'm mixing it with water, I'll normally dollop some PVA in as well, especially if you're doing things that are going to be movable or touched. You know, it's just one of those things that's a useful tip. The thing I find with Celluclay though is it shrinks, like a lot of products that air drying, it shrinks as it dries. So if you can either just do 1/2 at a time, or you can put a slightly squishy sort of subsurface, whatever you're building up, so it can shrink in a bit, which makes doing it over something solid like wood much harder than doing it over something less solid like cardboard. Cardboard just basically has it has a little bit of give. So that helps with the shrinkage. I don't use Celluclay much other than for trees though. Because of this, I would normally use Sculptamold. And one of the questions that people asked me was, why didn't I use Sculptamold when I was doing this tree? And the short answer was, Sculptamold's a little lumpier. Celluclay is paper mache. It's a fine paper pulp. with something else thrown in, presumably a glue of some sort. You add water and it should stick. I add extra glue, but it's finer. So it comes up with a better texture for bark. It can be quite rough, and on this tree that I'd just done, I'd used a knife to do it, and that gave it a lovely texture. And I did the same on my 1/6, the tree with the wolves. So we're actually now onto what I did over the 2 days that I worked on this live stream work over the last couple of weeks. It's all dry now, and actually it's in the background here. So I drew out a better plan. We'd done a plan on last time's live stream, but it was very generic. So I went through and decided where I was going to put the different risers. I would normally do my bases onto something like a picture frame if it's smaller. For this, I use foam. Now, there is a danger it will warp, and I've got a few warped bases because foam isn't the strongest, especially if you're putting something that shrinks on top. So if you're going to cover everything with something that just has slight shrinkage, sculpt mold's okay, but some of the other products, you know, if there's a lot of glue and water to come out of them, they shrink slightly and they can just bend up, banana shape your foam. So it is something to watch for. I know the Luke Towns of the world always put wood around the outside. I have nowhere to cut wood, so I am definitely not about to start cutting on my granite kitchen work surface. So as a result, I just tend to stick to foam. But the first thing I did was scrunch up some foil. Let's go look at the chat for a sec. Is the program I use to design stuff for my 3D printer easy to use? If you're going to use Fusion 360, which I use for engineering items, I think relatively easy, and there's others of that ilk. If you're going to use Blender, which I'm using more and more, it's just so big, it can be very daunting because it's made to do more than 3D prints. It's great for organics, less so for engineering, because it doesn't really have any sort of latching or plans in the same way as Fusion. So I use Blender free or Fusion 360. Blender complex, harder, more learning curve. It's relatively simple once you get a head around it, but it is a learning curve. Fusion 360 I find much simpler to use. You draw a plan, extrude it out, and that's it really. Better go Banjo. Those trees are incredible. Thank you very much, Digger. Where did I see the symbol on your shirt before? Probably me. It's actually my logo. It's two, is the K's. It's 2 K's back to front. Forward and back to front, and it also makes 2 M's, so Kathy Millett Modelling, 2 M's, 2 K's, just there's a spare K in there, so that's where it comes from. PVA glue. Have I tried PVC board? Do you mean Foamex? I do, it just gets a bit expensive, so I use it for backdrops where I need thinner items, but where I'm doing bases I use the foam. I also use it as fascias around the front. So on my Halo diorama, if you look at that and it's got a lovely black fascia all the way around about it, that's black Foamex. And I always have a couple of pieces on hand because it is brilliant for just finishing off. It has a nice luminous sort of sheen to it. And it's relatively simple. The corners don't look great, but it's relatively simple to cut with a knife. So I use Foamex a lot. I need a miter box and miter saw. Don't want to be cutting. Just don't want to be doing it. Yeah, it depends what you're doing. If you're doing sculptor mould, it doesn't shrink. If you're doing tar grout and glue, it may shrink a little. The one that warped the most recently was my base that I did for, it was Darth Vader on the snow for the Clone Wars. And it was actually foam putty by Woodland Scenics that shrank and caused it to warp the most. And the glue hadn't quite gone off when I put the top layer onto it, shrank and pulled it in. So that was that one. 4X can be used with a CNC milling machine. Much more easy as polystyrene, yeah. I'm not likely to get a CNC milling machine, but I would love to have a laser cutter, and you can't use PVC on that because it produces chlorine and kills you. So one definitely to think about. But polystyrene is just so easy. So when we get to the base in a second, we'll see what I used. So the first thing I did, you can see it hanging on in the background, I actually did foil. I scrunched my foil up. I thought about using cardboard, and I could have used cardboard kitchen roll tubes if I had enough of them. I could have used anything. A lot of my trees are quite flat though. They're like half trees. They're not going to be a full round. So something like foil, it's just Tesco foil, it's nothing exciting, it's quite easy. I should have made it a little bit more scrunched and a little bit more of it in there, because I did have a couple of problems with droopage later. And that was because I was trying to do 2 days of this, and the first day I did the foil and I plastered on a bit of the Celluclay mix. The second day I went back and put loads of Celluclay on, and I put more on than the foil could hold, because it's quite damp when you put Celluclay, it's got all that water and PVA glue in it. So it dragged it down weight wise, and I should have actually maybe put some more supports in them. Yeah, I could have just put less on at a time, let it dry out, and then it wouldn't have been an issue, because the weight wouldn't have been there, and the layers of the existing Celluclay would have helped rigidity. So, what scale is the X-Wing model by Tamsin? The X-Wing is a 1:48. I 3D printed it in that scale from a free one that was 1:64 from, the link's in the description down below. It was off Thingiverse. And the reason I did 1:48 was I wanted to be able to do decent water effects and to be able to see the people. Yoda is so small, he's only me. So having him too small that you can't really see him, I feel loses the scene. And at 1/64, he was just too small. He was getting a bit blobby. You know, you sneezed, you might have lost him. So I wanted him to be visible. So because of that, I went 1/48. There we go. So once, so 1:48 for all those people asking about scale. So this bit of foam that's up at the moment, I got this at Skip. This is my favourite place to get foam. Now, there's 2 types of foam out there. One called XPS foam, which I think stands for expanded polystyrene. And it's basically what you find in insulation. In a lot of countries, you don't get it in the UK for insulation very often. You sometimes get it under floors. And the reason you don't get it is it's not fire retardant. So you can cut it with hot tools, hot wire tools, so it's easy to sculpt and carve. This is PIR foam, Celotex. This is another brand, and it's fire retardant, and it always comes with foil on the outside. And you can get it. This is really thin. It's about this thick. I didn't want it any thicker. I'll probably put something underneath to make some more rigidity in there, as we talked about. And then a lot of it, and mostly out the Skip, comes about this big now, so it must be 100 mil. And it's just, I've had lockdown. Everybody around me has had an extension. Practically every house in the road except mine and my mum's has had an extension. So we've been able to just go around the builders and say, oh, if you have any Celotex, can you let me know? And I get quite large pieces of it, this being an example. And they're very happy because they're throwing it out. They keep their big pieces, but they're very happy for you to take it. So just go and take them out of Skips. Ask if you want to. It's always politer. But, you know, they're enjoying filling up their Skips. You're emptying it for them. And it's a great source. You have to use a kitchen knife, or I used a box cutter here, and it cuts very smoothly with a sharp knife. Best thing though, give it a good sharpen. Buy a knife sharpener and use it regularly when you're cutting these types of foam. So I think it'd be good to have wood or steel frame inside the foil. With hindsight timber, yep, I think I wasn't going to do wood. If I'd had it around, I'd have done it, but I just wanted to get on, and sometimes you do that. By the time all the Celotex is on, and it's got quite a few layers of it, and it's got jute string on the outside, rigidity I don't think is going to be a problem. I think it will be fine. And all the ones on the backdrop will be against a backdrop. So there's only 2 that aren't actually on a backdrop. So I think it will be fine. Yeah. Wireframe. If I could have found those coat hangers, I suspect I must have got rid of them when I had a clear out. If I could have found those coat hangers, I'd have used those because they're really useful. But I wasn't going to pay money to buy more, I think was the thing. When you want a laser cutter, try to get on one of the better, more expensive machines. Only better Epilogue, Universal Laser or Trotec can do 3D structures. It's interesting to know. I would like one. I really lack the space at the moment, so I tend to 3D print or not do anything. Fracasso K. XPS is extruded, thank you, extruded polystyrene. Expanded polystyrene, those white bubbly things, which I do use, but they just drive me mad because the bubbles go everywhere. So thanks for that, Timber. Pre-used for a good price on the laser cutter. I'd like to, it's a space thing, and I actually just need to make money to cover my bills at the moment, so that's my first plan. Hello, Pedro. Welcome. XPLs is very nice to work with on the CM. It makes so much dust. That is actually a point. I wasn't cutting a huge amount here, but if you're carving and you're using brass brushes and you're trying to do all that kind of stuff, do wear a dust mask, because that dust coming off these foam, if I'm not just doing straight cuts like this, I am really, really coughing after a few minutes. That dust is vicious, so definitely wear a mask with it. Okay, so hi everybody. Was really impressed by the Star Wars Samurai crossover. Wonder if it would work with other sci-fi genres, Daleks and Cybermen perhaps. I think it would. I would like to do the Samurai Halo. There's a Yoroi figure promised by Jazzwares, and when that comes out, I might do a bit of a dust-up between Darth Vader or Boba Fett and a Yoroi Spartan and see what happens. You know, Star Wars versus Halo. Who do you think would win? I know who I think would win, and I'd probably bet on them. But, you know, I'll probably ask the audience at the time. So definitely would like to do that. I need someone to actually issue that figure because I haven't got time to design it from scratch. And actually, my last two videos didn't do at all well. So I've either lost my mojo or just people have gone back to doing other stuff. But neither the droid nor the Fairground, they're just kind of my two worst videos this year, really, including my 5-minute sort of starting scenery courses. And the Fairground struggled. I think it's at 6K at the moment. It's been out a couple of weeks. So I need to think what I'm doing on the next one. Well, I know what I'm doing on the next one. It's done. But what I'm doing over the next few ones. I was really impressed. What's your favourite material to work with? My favourite material? If I had to pick one material for scenery, it would be tar grout. I put tar grout in everything. Every single thing gets tar grout. This will probably get tar grout at some point. But when it comes to foam, you know, just generally scenery, I think foam sculpt mould and tar grout are my favourites. I just do everything with those. And, you know, there's other things you can use, but I can do 99% of what I want with those. Yeah, Tim, I will definitely find those coat hangers the second the trees are finished. I knew where they were before I tidied. Yeah. Wait till fibre labours get cheaper. I'll have to look at fibre lasers. Big metal barbecue stools. I could have even just used my bamboo skewers that I've got because they would have worked well. I think the trouble was I started building these trees, as you can see, before I did the base. And the reason for that, if I just talk through, just keep my light. I was going to do the trees separate to the base. And this is one of the things you have to think about when you're building something. What order do you do everything in? And I was going to do them separate so I could get underneath and put the Celluclay underneath, because it's really hard to get in under raised roots like you can see down those back trees that are going at the moment. And because of that, I was worried about how to just kind of get at everything. But I found they were getting so floppy, and all of those barbecue skewers and wires and all those supports need to go into something. So in the end, I glued them onto the back piece of foam that you can see there. And I was like, okay, I'll just put those ones on there. And I started to build the front ones, and I had the same problem, floppiness. So the one I'm doing at the moment, I put onto a piece of foam and I built everything else, and it was still just flopping everywhere. And I was like, this is daft. I'm just going to have to put them all onto the base and glue them on with hot glue to get the rigidity, the structure that I need, and it's going to make the later stages much, much harder. Hey, you do what you can, and it would be better if the trees were removable, but I'll live with it now. Right, so Polite 3000 Doctor Who diorama. It would be, but I am tempted by something more like the Ark in Space or one of those earlier ones. They had a Pointless where they had classic Doctor Who, and you had to name like the stories. And I had almost all the Pointless answers. I'm just listing them all off. I grew up reading the Doctor Who books as well as watching them on TV. So like one of the earliest pictures of me as a child, I'm preschool, I've got a blue little sticker, you know, a bandage on my knee from where I'd fallen over, and I'm reading Doctor Who and something like The Claws of Axos or The Hand of Fear or something like that. And, you know, I'm like so young. But those books were really simple, and I grew up in Doctor Who and Blake 7, two of my favourite when I was younger. I absolutely adored Avon. So yeah, there will be a Doctor Who eventually. But I'm out of love with the current ones. I feel they've become a little bit preachy, I think they've lost the stories. So, yeah. And I really didn't like Peter Capaldi. I kind of went out on David Tennant. He was my last favourite one. And I haven't really... Matt Smith didn't have the kind of same as... He grew on me, but he was following David Tennant, so it was a hard act. And Peter Capaldi, I think, just lacked the good stories of some of the earlier ones. So it's interesting. Stephen Moffat did the best individual stories. Silence in the Library, An Earthly Child, just The Girl in the Fireplace. And then he went on to do the story arcs, and it got too archy and less individual stories, in my view. Hey ho. Defo. Not quite sure what that's to, but I agree. 1000. A quarry with a film crew in it. For Doctor Who, definitely. Some cold Welsh quarry. Hi, Pedro. If you need steel wire for gas welding wire, copper rod mile steel, that would be interesting. Copper coated mile steel. I actually think that you can buy things like bonsai wire and armature wire, which are really great for bending. So they are easy to use in modelling, and I keep meaning to buy some and I never do. Some people in the US can't hear the word mask without getting all salty. For those people who complain about mass, I totally understand it. I've been on a train a lot, and I had something that was very garlicky at lunchtime, and I had to wear a mask for 3 hours on the way back on the sort of train. Oh, I was so over the smell of garlic. It's just mask garlic. Oh, it was horrendous. I was like, probably the rest of the train really relieved I wasn't garlicking them all out, but I'm never having that particular option at lunch ever again because, whew, that was a really odd experience. But, you know, I do some spraying with organic solvents, and the masks I wear leave massive marks here, and they really dig in. And it's actually in some ways more comfortable than these thin paper ones. Does tar grout shrink or crack from FCAT Fracasso? Yes, it does. Partly because when you mix it up and put it on, quite often you're putting quite a thick layer, and sometimes it will crack when it dries. That's why there's 2 things you can do to help avoid that. One is to put PVA glue in. We talked about that earlier on the stream, but PVA glue is the answer to most cracking. It will solve a lot of things. The other thing is if you put a bit of sand in, just gives it a little of a looser structure, and it works really well. But if I put PVA in, I have no problem with cracking. I find it cracks most when I've sprinkled it on and I've built it up too thickly. Then I've sprayed isopropyl alcohol and water and glue from above. That's when I get cracking. It's so easy though, because you just go over with another coat. It only has to be a thin coat. You fill in the cracks and it's not a problem. So don't worry if it does crack. And if you're doing the kind of sieving on technique, you're more likely to get it. So where have I got to? 1 week you can say it's Doctor Who, the next you can say it's Blake 7. Well, they were very similar. If you watch Blake 7 now, it literally is cardboard and foil. So much fun. They must have had great fun making up. And the Ark in Space, classic Tom Baker, if you look at it, it is literally bubble wrap, inside out with the bubbles on the outside. This is the alien creature taking over man. With sprayed green, bubble wrap sprayed green. Classic use. Yeah, I like both. I thought the Fairground was fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt Smith. Obviously, I like you. It wasn't, unless you are the Matt Smith that did the Doctor Who. Obviously, David Tennant, hard act to follow. Yeah, the Fairground, and thanks, MG. It was one of those, I think it suffered from not having a base and people and all around it, but I wanted it out there to get the video done just because I've got so much to do, and I want to build up 2 or 3, so I can't afford them not to go out individually because they just take so long. I've done a Helter Skelter that I took a year to 2 years to design in Fusion 360, then I moved it to Blender, and it went off again, and and I had problems, and it was just supporting it when it came to print. And it's printed now on its support, sitting in my 3D print room with not a lot of UV light sitting there till I get round to snipping it and curing it. And so I've got this Helter Skelter to do, and the Americans don't seem to have Helter Skelters, but basically you go upstairs in the middle and come around the outside on a slide on a Hessian, like a doormat effectively. And as a child, I spent a lot of time on fairgrounds going around these. So I'd always wanted to do one. So I'm going to I've printed it in clear red and it's going to get lights. So that will be the next one. And I've got a couple of other fallas to do. But I wasn't that impressed with the falla system. And I think I used oil and either timber or digger, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one, suggested I should have used graphite and instead as a lubricant, and I think they were right. So I need to take it apart and re-lube it properly, because when I painted it, it just started to stick a bit. And they were going around till I oiled them, and then they didn't go around at all. Thank you. Fibre laser. Okay, I'm going to move out of fibre versus CO2. I don't even know what a fibre laser is. I agree the Fairground was great. Thank you very much, Norman and Tim. Yeah, it isn't something you see a lot of, and I really like them. I actually 3D designed a Ferris wheel as well, but again, it's in pieces and I've never finished it. I just have too many ideas, not enough time. Okay, so ignoring the whole laser cut thing because I don't understand it. Tom Baker was the best. He was my childhood Doctor Who. So all those people that are saying Cozzy and John, totally agree. There's a hole in the fabric, the time-space continuum in my train room. Things disappear forever. I won't tell you how many things I have two of, how many tools. I have 2 Xeron nippers for rail because I couldn't find one. 2 Xeron the trip pin pliers because I couldn't find one. You know, I just end up buying everything twice. And then I always find the other one a couple of weeks later. I should just send it back to Amazon, shouldn't I, at that point? Doctor Who rant. If you, apologies if you're American and you've no idea what we're talking about, because Doctor Who didn't really hit America a while ago. I think the new ones have, but I'm not sure the Tom Baker and the John Pertwee ever really did America. So unless you were really geeky at the time, it was probably quite hard to watch them. Miffed is coming back to do some of the new ones. Who's Miffed? Stephen Moffat. Oh, thank you. Is he? I mean, when he does individual stories, I don't think you can beat him. You know, Silence in the Library was a classic episode. It was just brilliant. And I really liked the whole Donna Noble, you know, Donna Noble has left the library, exit through the gift shop. I really liked that one. And, you know, he's a very brilliant writer. I just don't think he was great as the series runner. Carpet monster. Okay, so do you keep all your dioramas or do you scrap your least favourite ones to save space? Chris, that's a really great question. I sound like a politician there, don't I? I keep them. They're all up there. And what can I say? I'm running out of space. I really am. But I don't like any of them when they're done. I'm too much of a perfectionist. I just see the flaws. There's very, very few of anything I've ever finished that I look at and think I like that. I'm just that kind of person. I look at it and just see the flaws and what I do differently next time. Just to go back to this for a minute, just so it pretend like I've got the photo out on my phone and I'm placing the people and the trees so they line up as best as I can with the actual movie scene shot. Now, when you're doing something like this, you have a choice of either recreating it exactly, which doesn't work with anime, I've discovered, because they actually draw it differently from different angles. Woohoo! Says someone trying to create an anime at the moment, a scene from one of those. But for something like this, which was an actual set, if you can get a photo from the angle you want and then line up all of your trees, everything more or less right, when you take your final photos, you'll get a better result because it will look more like the original. And it was quite a deep scene because obviously they flew the X-Wing in. So that's why it's this way round, the scene, and the photo is sort of aligned that way round. And I've got the 2 little figures. I think I printed R2-D2. I got sent one, which was brilliant. And he's got a hollow in the middle, so I can shove an LED up there. Haven't actually sorted the LEDs yet. I do need to do that. And I was trying to work out where to put Yoda. And what I realised as I was trying to put Yoda on there all the time is I'd made the tree at the front left too tall. So I kept having to squash the front tree down. I carved a bit more foam out and did things like that to try and get Yoda at the right height because he was just too tall for the rest of the scene. And when I was really happy with everything, I went through and used spots of hot glue to attach it. Now, more hot glue would be better, but what I find is the hot glue goes off at one end. This foam is fine. If you do it too hot on a XPS foam, the hot wire type of foam, it will actually melt the foam and then it will have gone cold and then you can't get it on. So where I'm doing big pieces, I actually will use two glues. I'll use hot glue in spots to hold it down, and then white glue or something like that takes way longer to go off, but will eventually be more firm. For these spots, because I know I'm going to go over everything with a coat of sculptor mould, probably on that base, I wasn't worried about them lifting off. So what I've done is I've just put spots of hot glue to hold them down for now, and they will be glued on the outside to a backdrop as well. So there'll be a lot of points of gluing them eventually. But I tried printing a picture, but I did a big A3 one. It was just like black. I couldn't watch, I couldn't really see anything on it. So having the phone out, going in and checking, making sure everything lines up. This is the stage you need to do it at, because once these are all glued in place and the foil and all the Celluclay starts going on, you can't change it. So it's very important that you're happy at this point. And then I was just more scrunching of foil, going round, adding it in. Now, the hot glue and foil technique is really quick, and I got it from watching people who do clay sculptures. Ever you've seen someone do a clay sculpture, they always start with foil on the inside, and the reason is they bake them quite often in the oven. So that baking, foil just helps with distributing the heat, and you don't use as much then of your expensive outer modelling coat. Just getting over my cold. I went to Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. I didn't catch COVID, I caught a cold. I've been so miserable for the last week. First cold in 2 years. So, Chris, yes. So I may eventually sell some dioramas because I'm running out of space, but they're still my babies. I may not like them when I look at them, but they're my babies. Okay. Bye, polite. Have a great time. Have a great evening. Maybe see you later. Okay, we're still talking laser cutters. Too many ideas and not enough time is very much where I live. I work on the principle, Tim, then actually I enjoy creating, and whether that actually creates a model at the end of it or not is perhaps less of an issue, as long as I've enjoyed the process. So the other Sunday when I was trying to have an afternoon off, I sat down and just tried to design in Blender a scene from an anime where it's a personal small Gundam, it's not a Gundam, but it's that kind of thing, just crashes into a colony. And I wanted to create that, and I just did it. It may end up, it may not. I probably won't finish it, I'll probably never get any further, but I like sometimes just having a go at creating stuff because that's what I enjoy doing. I love that act of creativity. I never hid Andy. Shame on you. We're about the same age, aren't we? You may be a little bit younger. Yes, Doctor Who was in America. It was on PBS. Oh, that's good to know. I remember saying to an American when I was younger and I went over there that our tent, because we were camping, was like a TARDIS, and they just looked blankly at me and never even heard of it. So I don't think it made it into mainstream as much as over here, where everybody watched it. Not that Matt Smith, not my favourite Doctor. Wouldn't mind his money though. Tom Baker was the best. We're all agreed on Tom Baker then. So let me know, if I was to do a Doctor Who diorama, and it certainly won't be this year, which one would I do? Something like, Luke Tarrant's just done Stonehenge. You could add a Tom Baker in and make that the Stones of Blood. Do you remember when they used to suck people dry? That was a Doctor Who from the sort of time key crystal thingy arc. Doctor Who's been around on TV since at least the 70s when I was a kid. Cheers. I hate to say this. I think it was around from the 50s. Did it not have its 50-year anniversary not that long ago? It's about the same as Star Trek, I think. So I watched repeats in the 70s because obviously, and they lost a lot of the earlier ones. PBS had early Doctor Who over here and then BBC America. Oh, that's good to know. Sea Devils, they were excellent. Would you consider trying to put your dioramas on display somewhere? Peter. I don't know. I don't know then would be that excited about seeing them. If I start going back to exhibitions again, then I might take some of them with me, the smaller ones. But some of them, I haven't really made them with travel in mind, which is why selling them isn't a great idea, because I get the feeling some of them may not survive. So take my Mandalorian one, for example. I'm sure I could sell that one quite easily because it's Star Wars. But the stormtroopers just go on their sticks all the time because the sticks are really a bit too flimsy for those heads. So if you walk past in my room, it's an upstairs room, it's a wood floor, and they just go boom, 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 boom as I go past. So I could take them off for shipping and someone would have to put them back on. And I think that would be fine. But it just shows things aren't made for shipping unless you're making them to sell. They're made for YouTube or to go on a shelf here. So I'd have to think very carefully about it, but I'm not against it. I just don't think, yeah, well, see if anybody wants to see them. Hi Anfield. Nice to see you here. Used to watch the Tomorrow People. Carol was my first crush. I won't tell Mary, but I'm sure she might read this later. I vaguely remember the Tomorrow People. Thanks Norm about the cold. Fez, you have a great excuse. Congratulations, and don't worry about watching it, it'll be there for a long time. John Pertwee. I watched the original the first John Pertwee, and you get to see his backside when he's in the shower. I was quite shocked. That was on BBC. Tom Baker of the original recent crop, David Tennant. Tamsin, we are on the same page there. Yeah, it's definitely black and white. My mum remembers it as a child as well. Full-size TARDIS, and we've done a few photo shoots with it. Really booked back to my childhood. For all of those that are into Doctor Who, I think Pico actually do a small police box you can buy and put on your layout if you want. So you can actually have a little slice of Doctor Who on your layout if you feel like doing that little bit of whimsy. 1963, thanks Tamsin. Sylvester McCoy's underrated. I wasn't a great fan of Ace though. She was Sylvester, wasn't she? John Pertwee. I remember a lot of these from the books that I read. So I remember a lot of John Pertwee ones because I read the books rather than I remember the TV particularly. Press the like button. Thanks, Advent. Yeah. So when I was in Cardiff Comic Con, I was getting Colin Baker. He's supposed to be quite grumpy, isn't he? Autograph, and somebody fainted. He was absolutely fine, but Colin was the one who shouted, "Is there a doctor around?" Just amused me. Yeah, I can imagine that. Appear and disappear, a TARDIS in a diorama. Pepper's Ghost. Something like Pepper's Ghost. That would be the way to go. Something like that. Yeah, we'll just have it on a video screen. If it's going to sound a bit sad, but I've actually got a small photo frame screen that you can play something on, like a short video. And I want to do a cyberpunk diorama eventually, long way off. And I'm going to do Pepper's Ghost and use that as the video source for it. But yeah, trees are already taking shape, looking great. Yeah, this is 2 solid days. So they're not long days, they're probably only 5 or 6 hour days, but 2 solid days of scrunching foil and putting it on here, which is why I'm leaving it to go in the background a bit, because, you know, if I had tried to do this on a live stream, you would all be bored after the first 5 minutes because I'd be desperately trying to scrunch foil, which isn't quiet. And then we haven't even got to the Celluclay yet. We are still just scrunching foil. So this is still day 1 because I actually did the first layer or 2 of Celluclay on the left hand, the far trees, the ones nearest me at the moment, on the first day too. 60th anniversary in a couple of years. Does not look very realistic. Give it time. Give it time. What doesn't look very realistic though? The diorama or Doctor Who? Why not convention of Who? Build a Doctor Who, focus on human building and have all the Who's present. I have a scheme where they may get into something at some point. Let's just leave that there. Hi Peter. Patrick Towton. He was grumpy, but The Abominable Snowman was a classic episode. So anyway, to get away from Doctor Who and to get back to kind of this, which is, yeah, I like the Thulu, if you can ever pronounce it. Thulu? Dunk, definitely. TARDIS in a future pond. Thanks, Norm, on the... yeah, so just if you have any feedback on having it as a video so you can see a lot more modelling, because things like bases, they just take a long time. They're not that exciting. Whoops, that was me putting the photo in the way so that I can check the scene. So that was the scene just there, the view that it's going to be. And this is I don't know, 12 hours of modelling sped up. If I was to try and do any of this on a live stream, I feel it would be really distracting and you wouldn't get much value. You wouldn't see it and you wouldn't be able to ask me questions about it because I wouldn't have achieved much. I probably wouldn't even have got anywhere near just putting on the Celluclay. But that reminds me, I was going to mention just very briefly, I ran out of Celluclay and it's blooming expensive. It's by someone like, I want to say Activia, but I think that's the yogurt. So it's someone like Activa. And it's American and it's grey and it's paper mache. So I have bought some art mache from Amazon, which is white. I've still got quite a bit of Celluclay left, but probably not enough to finish this. And I'm going to get this out Monday, tomorrow. Well, I've got a few things to do, but I'll probably get it out and do a morning tomorrow on it. And plaster on some more Celluclay and leave it to dry because it takes a long time to dry this. So it's all now dry. If you look behind me, this is all solid. And actually, those are well solid now. Even though they were bendy before with the foil, once you've got a thickness of Celluclay on, it's well solid. And there's no cracking on it because of the PVA. And I've only really done the front half of the tree on any of them. So it just will have shrunk down against itself. And I think foil works well because there's some scrunch in it. So I've got this art mache from Amazon in the UK. If you're in the US, Celluclay is the well-known one and I would just go for that. If you're in the UK, I'll let you know how the art mache went. I wouldn't recommend it necessarily for a lot of products, but where you're trying to do something like this, it's just another version to sculpt to mould. And it doesn't have the plaster in, so it's got it's much lighter actually. Even though sculpt mould's not heavy, it's also a lot more, it'll be easier to break and cut through should you wish. So it's just another option for those people who perhaps don't want to use sculpt mould for some reason. So, this will date me. I remember hiding behind the corner of the sofa to the very first series of Doctor Who with William Hartnell. David, it does date you, but it's not a bad thing. Yes, R2-D2 did appear for a bit. I printed him separately. I actually had to do him. He looked really large, actually. And then when you go and look at him in the movies, you realise how small Luke is. So he is quite large against Luke. Yoda's quite small, though. And I've done them all 1 to 48 by taking the height that you can find on Wikipedia and then dividing that out and getting the size. And then in my print software, to print Chitterbox I use, I made it the height on the z-axis of the model. So I know they're all scaled exactly at 1/48 of the actual height of the characters. Right, this way definitely works. Thanks, Tim. R2-D2. This is Tamsin. The robot's so sweary they had to bleep out all of its dialogue. Oh, BB-8 must have been really bad as well then. Did you leave the silver foil on the base to stop the water effect soaking in? Okay, Nick, it's a really good question. So I leave the foil on because it adds rigidity. This is also very hard to glue together. This foam is very dusty. If you use hot glue, it's very easy to break because the hot glue and whatever glue you use only really attaches to the dust on the surface, which comes off quite easily. So I actually find it's more secure to glue the foam that has somehow, it's been injection squirted in against that foil. So I find it easier to glue it if the foil is the surface I'm gluing. It's more robust, especially when I'm using something like hot glue, which sticks well onto the foil. So what I tend to do is, unless I'm carving the surface, I will leave the foil on. The only thing to watch, and this caught one team out on the Great Model Railway Challenge, is foil is conductive. So when you're putting runners through for things like feeders on your track, or if you were to do track and butt it up against a hill that has foil on it, you can short out your track. So for model railways, just think whether you're going to short anywhere when you leave the foil on. And sometimes I would remove it for that. Generally, I haven't used this type of foam that much on my railways, but where I have, it's not had track much on it. just a thought that you can short it, and the poor guys couldn't work out why they had to shorten their layout, and it's because they had a piece of the foil upright and they pushed the end of the track against it and the two sides were shorting across the aluminium. Just something to watch. Enjoy making the tea. See you later, Stephen. So, did you leave the steel foil? Hi Mad Bren from Ireland. Every time something new pops up on my screen, my cat tries to attack it. Sensible cat, it's just keeping you safe. What scale would the borrowers be? Well, that's a good question. One I've never really thought about. That's interesting. Using a hand plane to remove the foil. I just pull it off. Yeah, I'm going to be using it on my next diorama that I'm starting after I've done the modelling for this next one. I'm going to be using it, and it's a Halo diorama. Halo Infinite finally comes after about 6-year wait, comes out on December the 8th. And I was going to do one diorama. I was going to do 2 or 3 dioramas for it. And one of them I'm still waiting for something to, I don't know, probably not going to happen. But the first one is an exploding warthog. The warthog's not actually going to be exploding. It's going to be, its back end's in the explosion. And if anyone's a Halo fan and you've seen the multiplayer preview adverts that are running all the time on Instagram and on YouTube and that, basically it comes off a bit of a rock face. There's hexagonal bits at one side, pine trees, and it's coming in midair. It's holding the flag because it's red versus blue, capture the flag sort of thing. And there's a big explosion behind it. And I'm going to have this warthog in midair. It's so heavy, this warthog. I mean, it's this size, it's chunky. That I'm just having a headache at the moment about how to support it. It's got 3 holes underneath that are screw holes, and I think I might end up 3D printing a custom stand and then hiding it with the explosion. So the explosion is going to be coming round the warthog quite a bit, and then it will just be, you know, a fixed point. So that's the first one. And the second one, I also got a mongoose, which is like it's like an all-terrain motorbike, and it's got they've all got the Master Chief on them, and I'm going to have that going through a river with the water sploshing. So the model's already done. I just need to do the dioramas around them. So those are interrupting my normal viewing because I've waited 6 years for Halo. I remember going and playing Halo the first year I went into contracting and had 3 months off, and I bought the Xbox and I played all the way through to Halo 5, and that was just brilliant. I had a whole summer of playing Halo, and it was awesome. It was a really, really good time to visit my friends in Hong Kong, you know, just great. So Halo has some great memories for me, apart from Attack on the Control Room and going around that level like 1,000 times. But it was almost the first time I played a game in sort of 10 years. I was really lousy. I had to put it on easy at one point. I normally play on normal. So there we go. Right, let's have a look. Minuscule dunk. I'm actually really lucky. Usually when I'm modelling, she just sits on the tower and watches. Occasionally she comes down for pets. Doesn't really mess with my models. That is my big worry about having a cat or a dog. My modelling's always on the floor. I haven't got enough space in the house unless I use the floor. And my kitchen floor over the winter is heated, so it's brilliant for drying stuff. So all of my models end up on the floor to dry, more or less. And my kitchen floor is just, it's like a minefield when you walk in there, because it's just, you know, plus the Porte de Norwich layouts on the floor in there as well. Yeah, timber, it is hard to rip, but that's for getting foil off foam, but I'm not that fussed because, yeah, I'm carving it anyway, so I'll just carve around it. How does 3D printing, this is from Andy, how does 3D printing compare in terms of cost to, say, Bandai Star Wars kits, also like panel lines, etc.? I think it depends a bit on the scale. I wouldn't 3D print something I could buy as a kit, if I'm honest, in the scale that I wanted, because kits just have better finishes. I'm a great fan of plastic kits. I've been building some Gundam recently. I've really enjoyed the plastic kit. But there's one X-Wing in 1:48, and it's because if I was doing a smaller scale I could use Bandai, but they don't do any in 1:48, and that's a fine mould, I think. They're a couple of £100. So in that equation, 3D printing is much cheaper. It's quite a big model, and if I'd done it on my Elegoo Mars, I'd have had to do it broken up maybe a little bit more, but it was two sort of 35-hour prints. Or was that the T-Rex I've just done? That was the T-Rex. It was 2 big prints, probably 24 hours or so to get it done. So you've got wear and tear, you've got to buy the printer, you've got to buy the resin. So it could easily, on an expensive machine like I was using, because I did it in clear, just because it was in there and it was the size of it, it's probably not cheaper to do 3D printing. But 3D printing allows you to do things you can't do any other way. So that's where it really excels. After cold, I woke up a week ago with sore throat. I was like, I haven't had one of these in years. The other thing is you'll get layer lines on 3D printing. Filament, definitely. You'll still get them slightly in some orientations on resin printers. The resin printers are getting better every year, so they're getting harder and harder to see them and whatever. So you may need to just tidy them up a bit. I found I did a really big print and it was massive, and the layer lines got worse as I went down because there's more suction forces as you get further down a big print. So we'll see. Yeah, I wouldn't be without my 3D printers, but if I could buy a kit instead, I've just done these Gundam and they're so beautiful. And 30-minute missions is the latest lot I've done. They're Bandai. They're just so easy. They just all sit and they're smooth, and you've got to take a few nubs off and that's it, compared to prepping after some of the 3D prints. On the other hand, I've just done a T-Rex for Jurassic Park rainy day kind of follow-up diorama, which is coming in 5 dioramas time. I like to print early in case there's any problems. And, you know, something like that. Again, I just can't get the kit in the size that I want. Oh, don't. Your son-in-law is a lead programmer on Halo, and you tell him I'm a huge fan of the campaign. I don't do multiplayer, but I love the campaign. I'm so jealous. You could find out what's happening. Does the Master Chief win? What about Escharum? Where did the Banished come into it? Anyway, it's very excited. Halo's an entire galaxy now, and I've read quite a lot of the books and done quite a lot of the lore. So I really got into Halo. I even watched all the crummy movies that go with it, and I really enjoy them because they're Halo. So big fan of Halo. Probably my favourite game though is Titanfall 2. Huge fan of that. You can buy steel or brass threaded rod for support, screws indirect and can be bent and is a strong support. Oh, that's interesting, that's gone black. There we go. I think it was just the overnight section. So, yeah, I've got some carbon fibre rod as well for support. What I'll probably do is do the 3D print and leave a channel for me to glue in the carbon fibre rod so that it puts a bit of rigidity into the 3D print. It needs to be hidden, so I just need to think very carefully. It's an angle thing because it's kind of at this angle. So yeah, I'm still trying to work out how it's all going to just... I'm going to do it tomorrow because I haven't got around to doing it yet. Missed the Railway Challenge, hope it's back next year. Graham, I don't think it's coming back. I've not heard anything, and it's disappointing because it was so much fun and it really put model railways out there as entertaining for the general public, which again had a great knock on to the rest of the hobby. Even the people who are quite serious, you know, the more sales anybody gets, the better the manufacturers do. So I am disappointed, but I think we'd have heard by now if there's going to be another one. I haven't actually priced up the Bandai Star Wars kits. I think every time I've looked at them, I've gone, oh, they're pricey. A lot of the Bandai stuff is pricey, but it is beautiful. The 30-minute mission kits were about £10–12, and they were really good, and they're little robots, so slightly different. Star Wars seems to attract a premium, I think, just because it's Star Wars. Probably have to pay LucasArts a huge amount of premium, you know, royalties as well. Hi, Tim. Welcome. Yeah, well, I'm well. I think everybody else is. I built an X-Wing with Spitfire markings just for the fun. Sure, it was Bandai. The fine detail was superb and easy to build, which suits me as I enjoy painting more than building. And you know, there is something very satisfying for me about just snapping together a plastic kit that doesn't even need gluing. I just love it. It's just, I could do it of an afternoon and just put it on my shelf and be happy. I've just literally snapped it together. And some of the Gundam kits are definitely in the snap together only range. because they are just so complex. With lighting and that, you don't really want to be painting them. But most of them get taken apart for painting. So I probably should talk a little bit about the video though. So here I am starting, this is still the first day, and I'm adding Celluclay to these 2 trees. Now, one thing to say, if you're going to spend all day putting on something that's damp and yucky, I do recommend wearing a plastic glove to apply it. And I also went through about 10 gloves doing all this because it does like to gloop and stick. It's just easier. And all I did was use a glove to apply it. I did try a palette knife briefly, but it's much harder. With a glove, you can just take it on and gloop it there. Now this foil is really wobbly if you look in this because it's still wet. But now, you know, when I lean over here and touch it, it's got a bit of spring, but it's certainly robust enough that by the time it's got the stuff on the back as well, it's going to be fine. So very, very simple technique to do. Now, if you look at this, you can see I put sculpt mold on the bottom to cover the foil, just because it is more solid. It's got that plaster in it. It's going to give it a nice base. I may have to come back, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do with the water yet. It may just get painted that surface with several layers of sort of Mod Podge, and it'll take several layers to cover the foil. So anyway, none of it's going to show through. It's going to be green gunk. So there's definitely going to be a piece where this sculptor mold may get extended a bit more. And I said earlier on the stream, I didn't do the trees in sculptor mold because just basically because it was, you know, it's a finer texture on this Celluclay. Now at this point, I actually have fast forwarded several hours because I thought watching me do this for several hours, A, eats through my hard drives because this is all in 4K, and B, doesn't really achieve much. I'm still just plastering on. So this is actually the second day now, and I've started doing exactly the same on the other side. But you can see the problem I spoke about half an hour ago, where I can't easily reach a lot of the items. And the Celluclay sticks to the foil. It sticks quite well because there's glue in it, but it's easy to knock off. And I was starting to knock Celluclay off all the time when I was trying to do more. So I left it, which is why I actually stopped where I did. I'd reached the point where everything was beginning to bend slightly and I was just knocking more off than I was putting on at one point. And it is hard, so I'm going to have to go back probably with a palette knife or a long finger and just try and get it underneath to cover all those areas. Alternatively, I will put jute string as well to create more of everything down there. And the jute string is probably, I'm debating covering it with Celluclay. On my halo tree, when I just did jute string as a vine, the twirl, the twist in the rope was really obvious and it looked wrong. So I went over and I just put tissue paper around it, which just covered it enough to create an interesting texture. And the Celluclay didn't stick that well. So what I'm thinking is I've got some old texture paste, like Tamiya texture paste with earth, and I think they're mostly paint, sand, and a bit else. So I'm probably going to go over the jute string with something that's a mix. It may have tar grout in, it will definitely have PVA and paint in. And you could use, if you don't want to use tar grout, you could use ground foam. It's a little bit springier and it will also pad things out. And I'm probably going to paint over that. So it may be that concoction goes in some of the foil at the bottom that's still there, just to hide it. Because the last thing you want when you take a photo is to have a little glimmer of foil just peek through, because it just isn't real. It doesn't look at all real. So yeah. But at the moment, I'm mocking these in. They're not really that smooth yet. And that's because I'm going to probably cover quite a lot of this with vines and jute string and all that kind of stuff for vines. And, you know, they've even got just normal grass on the ground, I noticed when I was watching the video game. Thank goodness for Disney Plus, because I can watch this as many times as I like. Not a plug for Disney Plus. First year I thought, oh, there's nothing really on here apart from Mandalorian. Then I just have done nothing but watch it since, because we did the Clone Wars and Rebels and all the rest. So we've had a great time with it. So Celluclay, I'm just smoothing it on. I'm not putting a texture in for the bark because this is the underlayer. It will take a knife very nicely and create a grooved texture for doing, bark. If you want to put it on the fine branches, like I did on the 1/6 tree, you need to put more glue in so it becomes a bit gloopier and a bit thinner. It's easier to put onto thinner branches then. So I might do a thinner, gloopier layer for the final layer and almost just paint it on a bit more. Okay, so piano wire for support, painted black or camo. Yeah, that's really nice and stiff, isn't it? How are you all? Kathy, I noticed you started at the bottom. Did you have any issues with the bases loosening up as you did the trunk and branches? When you say bases, Norm, do you mean the bases of the trees? I always start with the base, and I did the sculptor mould, which is set up by the time I'm doing this Celluclay, because it's set up from the day before, but hadn't dried, so it was still damp. I always start with the base because it's where the weight is, and so I always start at the bottom on something like this and work up, because the foil will start drooping, and I was hoping it would set up more so that it would give rigidity. It actually didn't set up quite enough, so it was starting to bend by the top, but I always work from the bottom up on things like this. But the builds gave you ideas for dioramas for model kits. Yeah, yes, definitely. Hi, Chasco. 3D printing is way over my head. I tend to reach for the balsa wood and cardboard. It's not a dinosaur. If you do 3D printing, if you want something and you haven't, how can I put this? If you don't want to 3D print it, get it from Shapeways if you need something you can't get elsewhere. I've bought quite a few 009 things off Shapeways, and before I had a 3D printer myself, I bought it. So you can still get the benefits of 3D printing, but just use a service like Shapeways. And there are loads of designs up there. I wouldn't be without it now, but what I do find is it's shifted a lot of my modelling time from the workbench to the computer. Not everybody wants that. How do you spell Celluclay? Celluclay. Stephen. So, Dunk. So Celluclay. It's made from cellulose fibres and then the clay. So it's cellu for cellulose and then clay stuck on the end. Gloop, interesting word. There is actually a whole set of words like gloop and goop that come out when you talk about scenery. They're great. Where can you get 1:24 scale pine trees for motor rally to do in the snow? The good thing about trees is they are scale agnostic, so you can just buy whatever scale you can get and buy the largest one that you can. And they tend to scale them by inches. So if you go on, they'll say, oh, these are O-scale trees. But quite often, certainly dioramas 1:35 and things like that, they just look small in 1:24, but they still look like a tree. So I don't actually know where you'd buy 1:24 scale pine trees. I tend to make my own. Thanks for spelling that, Timber. Fast worker. I can't remember what speed this was, but I've got to the end now, more or less. So it was starting to droop, and this is when I stopped. So I put some cunning masking tape to hold this set forward that were leaning forward, and this little one over here at the bottom here, he had droopage. So I put a bit of bamboo skewer to hold him up. There we go. And this is actually it. That was as far as I got. Now I do need to go back and do more, and I'll pick it up again tomorrow, but I didn't want to do too much in this session because I felt that it was this is a weekend. So this is what you would do if you spent all weekend modelling. Okay, so we can go back to full size me now. Out of sync. In sync? I'm on sync on mine. Almost. Yeah. So one of the things that, you know, that was a weekend. So that was what you would get done in a weekend. With something like Celluclay that is paper mache, there's no sculptable sets because plaster sets. There's a chemical reaction in there somewhere. And you can carry on working on top, but it's set solid. Depending how much water you put in, depends how long it takes to dry. This, you have to wait for the water to go off for it to be firm. And there's a danger if you've crusted the outside, you think it's firmer, and then you push against it and the inside squidges out. I may have done that in the past. So you have to leave it a long time. With central heating coming or sunny decks or whatever, you can just put it outside. But the quicker you dry it, the more likely it is to crack because it's getting uneven sort of drying, especially if you put it in the sun. So it's probably better to put it somewhere in a nice warm sort of place and just leave it. So if you're a weekend modeler, it's perfect because it will have dried enough by the next weekend that you can work on it again. If you want to model every day and crack out videos, it's not such a great product because it will take quite a long time to go off. Let's have a look. Sculpting tools or dental tools might come in handy. I do have some sculpting tools, but I tend to use a paintbrush. Don't know why, I've got really manky paintbrushes, so I often go back with them, especially for this, because I want that texture. Hiya, Rick. But how? I've never done anything like that scale. Graham, there's nothing different between a HO to an O to a 1:24 scale pine tree. I did pine trees for my halo diorama from scratch, and if I was doing 1:24, I can't remember what they were 1:64 I think, but if I was doing 1:24, I would literally use bigger dowels, more branches, bigger trees, just taller trees, and often the difference is literally just trunk size and tree length between a 1:24 scale pine and a O scale pine. So whatever method you would use to make pines, just make them slightly bigger. That's all there is to it. So find a method you like for making pines, whatever it is, and just make them taller. That'll work fine. Haha. Are you here for the trees? Do I like cooking? I love eating it. I don't cook. You see my kitchen? It's full of like Dagobah swamp scenes and just stuff. I can't get into my kitchen to cook, so no, I tend to follow the Catherine Zeta-Jones method of making dinner. It's like I make reservations. So that doesn't work during lockdown, so no, I don't really cook. Shame, I like it, but just don't have time, too busy. Why? When I'm cooking, I could be doing something else. Sad. I find Shapeways shipping to be extortionate. I haven't bought from anything from Shapeways for a while, and I don't know where they actually print them. But for the stuff I like, the 009, I got some little locos to go on top of chassis, and it was great. And I don't remember it being huge, but they were quite small. Starting to come to them in black and white. I think it's quite a sludgy coloured thing anyway. It's going to be mostly browns and greens. Keep up the good vids. Thanks, Anfield. So this is sort of 2 days. I'll do another couple of days over the week coming up in and around the Halo Warthog exploding, because that's going to have a lot of sort of thinking time in there and 3D printing time. And I'll come back next time, and it may not look that different. It may be mostly sculpt to mould still, but I'll probably have got onto the Duke string as well. And I'll try and get quite a bit done for this. This one, it just took a long time, and I was a bit against doing a week's worth of work on it because I felt it would get too far advanced too quickly, and it's a live stream, and normally you'd get like 2 hours of modelling in it. So I was just trying to balance up how much to do. Have I solved the mist problem yet? No, short answer. That one's in the future. I'm thinking about it. I've got to sort R2-D2's lights first, because before you get too far, you actually have to put the wiring in for the lights, or you just drill holes later. He's just got an LED to show up his bottom. Thanks, Volts. Thank you very much. I need a dehumidifier in the room if I want to dry fast. Yeah, I never realised how humid the UK was compared to other places. I mean, I always thought America was more humid because people complain about the humidity in America more than they do over here. And I think it's because it's hot and humid in places like Miami or anyway. But actually, when you look at it, I'm reliably, at the moment, around about 50% humidity in all my rooms. I wasn't in a rush for this. I actually moved it into my dining room and put it against the wall so I couldn't knock it, and just left it here for a bit. it's probably going to stay there now. And it's a convenient place for it out of the way. I can't knock it, especially when it's back against the wall. So it's useful for it because it's it can just sit there. But once the heating's on, I mean, they're sat on a stone floor that's heated, beautifully warm. Everything dries so quickly on that. It's just perfect, humidity or not. Trees look good, thanks. If you find that Sculptor dries too fast, you can use a retarder just to add vinegar to the mix. I tend to mix smaller amounts for sculptor mould, so I haven't hit the drying too fast. My problem is I often make it a bit too sloppy, so I actually need to add more in. But it's good to know that vinegar would work for that. I guess malt vinegar might make it smell like fish and chips, but yeah, that would be good. You saw that I tend to mix that much at a time. It's an ice cream carton and no more. So it's just, yeah, on these sorts of things and dioramas, it's probably enough to do most dioramas. You want to build a model of Whipstaff Manor from the movie Casper, D. Messer. But I'm an amateur and have no confidence in making a diorama. Any tips for a first-time diorama builder? First tip, don't worry if it doesn't look as you want it to. The first one's always a learning curve. Every time I try a technique, it's always better the second time. It's even better the third time, and it's much, much better the fourth and fifth times. And I notice that when I'm videoing, I often video the first one that I do of something because then I've captured it. But actually by the end, I'm looking far more accomplished because I might have done 10 of them for whatever it is I'm doing. So my tips first time you do everything is have an expectation that's in line with the fact you're a beginner, and don't worry. Perhaps if you want to do Whipstaff Manor and you're daunted by that, and I was talking about being daunted by my layout earlier today on the Hornbeat show, start with a smaller mansion. Do something that's a little bit smaller and practice some of the techniques in smaller scale. And then it won't take you as long to finish. You just do a quick diorama, you get a flavour of it and you get the practice, and you feel at that point that you've understood enough to then try Whipstaff Manor. Whipstaff? Yeah, Whipstaff Manor. I can't remember, it's really ornate, isn't it? Quite Gothic Victorian, I think. So in which case, you can buy Victorian, I don't know what scale you can do, but you can buy Victorian mansion type kits around from various different people, like either the European or the sort of US versions. And you could buy a kit. And again, if you're going to do a kit and it's your first ever plastic kit, then, buy a simple one, do that, and then do your more complex one. I think I am really bad at trying to run before I can walk. And it works okay because I've been doing this for 20 years now, so I've made a lot of mistakes. And I will say this, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning. I make mistakes on every build. Some of them I just bin because they're so bad. I just don't want even people to see them because there was nothing redeeming about them or nothing educational about them. So I bin them. But most stuff I'll show when I've made a mistake and how I've corrected it, if it actually makes it into the final diorama. Sometimes just for speed, you go back to the method you know, but I normally try something new on every diorama, and as a result, I can tell you, just expect things to go wrong and don't worry about it. It's fun, it's the journey. For me, it's exploring, and that itself is reward enough. She says, still gets me annoyed when things don't work. And the one thing I have noticed this year is my resilience for things going wrong hasn't been as high as it would be when I'd go back to a day job and have time for it to percolate through and think about it. So, not rushing is another thing, and just making sure you've, watched YouTube videos. Think about how you're going to build it in advance, pre-build it in your head so you've idea of what you want to do. I often will sit there and just run through, and this is why I miss my commute, because the commute, I had half an hour in my last job, well, half an hour to an hour depending on traffic, going over to Worcester every day, driving, and that commute let me decompress, but it get me a lot of thinking time where there's nothing else you can do. You're just driving on a motorway for 90% of it. So I would think a lot about how I was going to do things. I would plan what I was going to do that evening. If it was computer work, I think all the time about it, and that pre-thinking really does help when you come to do it, because you've let it all percolate through, and your subconscious has shown up all the things you need to correct and go back and do. And here, where I'm running full tilt all the time, I'm like, oh, I didn't do that and I meant to. And my brain catches up a day or two later, perhaps after I've finished it, which is annoying. Could do with a faster brain at times. Okay, so what else have we got? Oh, from Digger, practice on something small and have fun. Exactly what I said. And remember, if it doesn't look great, it doesn't look great. Keep it on the side, and when you build the next one and it's better, you can see how much you've improved, and it will be a real win. You'll go, look how much better I am than my first one. I look back on my first layout. Now, I was a child, and sand was the height of my modelling. That was like it, and green paint. The white lines, sadly no photos, were almost as thick as the road, which was just a solid grey paint, and the tunnel just came out of the ground and disappeared. And was it any the worse for that? No, I loved it. I loved doing it. Back then, sawdust was probably the height of realism. Things move on all the time. I've improved a lot. I look back at some of my early models, and actually I look back at some of them and think, gosh, I was really good back then. And I think the difference was time. But yeah, sometimes I just look back and think, oh, what was I doing? It doesn't matter. As long as you enjoyed it at the time, that's all that counts. Ma B asked, when did you begin to model dioramas and why? So I've always done dioramas. If you look on these shelves here, that's a Bordello from quite a few years ago. That's Machine and Krieger. That was off an O scale, ON30 modules. Down there, that's the Transformers, and beneath it is my first house. I've always modelled dioramas because my layouts have always been somewhere that hasn't been great to work on. When they've been up the loft, it's not the best place. It's too hot in summer, and there's no workplace there to really work. So I've always worked downstairs in my kitchen on everything. So anything that is anything is on a removable diorama. But I've always done separate ones because, truth be told, I like small dioramas, and I wish I'd realised this earlier in my modelling life, that actually I find a 12-foot square model railroad too much. I had all the great plans. I loved designing it, building it. I'm out of love of building it. If someone came and said to me, I'd love to come and build it for you, I'd be like, yeah, go at it. I like dioramas because I can finish them. So I started almost from the get-go. My houses that are at the bottom there, they were almost the first things I ever did. They were on my first UK layout. It's the house I lived in, which was by the railway on that layout. And so that would have been in about 2001, 2002. So 20 years ago I was doing dioramas. So I've always done them. And it's just A, for ease of handling, B, for attention span. My attention span is just better suited at diorama. And it allows me to try new techniques. I can do an ocean speedboat one week, and then do Lara Croft diving another week, and then do a beautiful scenery, halo, Pacific Northwest another week. It will take longer than a week. But I can finish them, and I can do a presented project. Some of my earliest work was always on diorama, and they're the ones I actually love the most. So there we go. Start off small. Yep. My timber was our 14-year-old chocolate lab. Oh, bless. Sorry, timber. Oh, and one other thing I bought, it's for the ebook, which I keep promising I'm going to write, but energy hasn't been there. I've got a load of small picture frames this size, and I'm going to do a technique on each one for the book. So, even just small things this size, small squares of foam core, it warps badly, but practice grass on that or something first, your static grass. Or just do what I do and plaster it all over your layout and then hope for the best. And if it doesn't work, rip it off. Don't recommend that. For the mist, you can put dry ice into hot water, but it's just temporary. I know, that's the trouble. The thing that works best, I suspect, is a terrarium mister. that work really well, but they're quite damp, so I'd have to seal all this. Otherwise I'm putting a lot of water in there, and that's just the thing I need to work out. How much water do they leave on the surface? Wood-burning stoves suck everything out of the room, air included. So, another method for the mist, the heating device from an automatic coffee machine, and put the steam oil onto it. I do wonder about steam oil, but I'm never quite sure I want that much of that oil particulate in the room, because I've actually got a fog machine, which I could use. It's a little vicious, but I could just use the fog machine. And it may well be that I just use my existing fog machine and I could use that fog oil. It's almost just like glycerine. I've also got a vape, which I bought to make something out of. I actually want to do a puffing billboard, with the circular puffs, but decided that was a bit, smoking was a bit out now. To maybe a steaming coffee billboard or something, one of my patrons suggested, but I might use it on this instead. So vapes. I'm not quite sure what some of these are answering. White vinegar, just pre-mix it with the water you use. Whipstaff, like from Casper. The word fail is just an acronym for first attempt in learning. That is brilliant, Stephen. And the one thing I do know in life is if you haven't failed, the chances are you probably either brilliant, well done, or you just haven't tried something outside your comfort zone. Because I fail all the time, and it gets me down sometimes when I'm short on time, but I actually like the process of trying. My road diorama, how to do a perfect road with the woodland scenic system, that was like my 4th version. 3 just went in the bin. They were awful. Not all with the woodland scenic system, but with other things. Oh, it was horrendous. I was like, own goal, crap, rubbish, bin. And then eventually on the 4th attempt, I got something I was happy to put out on YouTube. I wanted it for the book as well. That was really embarrassing. It's not just your first attempt. I can get it wrong 2 or 3 times, as I just said then. So it can be sail and tail and fail again. So yeah, you can do it many, many times. Thinking can lead to procrastination. And sometimes you do just have to start. I do just sometimes, like with the foil, I just got the foil out and started scrunching. I could have gone in about, I need to do this, I need to do that. I just got the foil and started scrunching and put Celluclay on. I knew it would work-ish, and it did. So, sometimes you just go for it. So, mistakes are the building blocks of skill, but learning the pitfalls from others before falling in them is the wisest action. Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of YouTubers show their failures. I love watching people do resin dioramas, and I feel for them every time they fail, because I would say 50% of the resin dioramas you see, deep pours, I'm talking about the really deep pours, 50% of them seem to have problems with them because it's not easy. And unless you're a professional and you're doing all the vacuum pumping, it's just, the resin heats as issues. So, I watch them all and I just keep thinking, nope, not going to do it like that, but I don't know how I am going to do it. So there's definitely, YouTube is brilliant for seeing methods, as long as you choose the right people. Some people just gloss past the useful stuff almost, but the Luke Towns of the world are just brilliant for showing you how they do things, and you can learn so much. I've learned a lot from Luke, and actually when I look back at some of my biggest techniques, I learnt them off forums 20 years ago, and I can't even remember who taught them me. I don't know where I got tile grout from. I don't think I invented it, but I would love to be able to thank the person who said, or I read, that they used tile grout, because it's been a godsend my entire modelling life. I've used it so many colours, so many times. So very few people come up with new techniques. Most people get them from somewhere, and sometimes they'll acknowledge them. I generally do. Sometimes they won't, but nobody really invents them from scratch. It is rare. Most people are taking something else and either taking it a logical step further or just doing it in a different format, in a different environment, on a different diorama. So go nick it from YouTube. It's the best way. For the warthog suspended in space, consider both solid and clear styrene rods. The solid rods are strong and transparent. The hollow give a channel for lighting effects. Yeah, I haven't. More on that when the video comes out. I think I'm going to have a play with it. It's very heavy, and it's the angles you put the rods at. It's how to get those angles so that they're not sticking down below where you'd expect an explosion cloud to be, is what I'm struggling with. So I think the lighting effects will be strip LEDs, just the normal strip LEDs, because it's just a fixed explosion. So yeah, yeah, I'm still thinking on that one. It'll be, if I slap Celluclay on, I'll have to design and print this, so I'll probably do it tomorrow. I've got an afternoon busy, but I'll do it in the day. Did you ever try the Blue Peter Tracy Island? No, but I want to do a Tracy Island. It is on my list. It's a long list, by the way. Tim, thanks for coming. Sorry if you've probably already gone, but thank you very much. Things work better if you were having fun doing it. And Tim, that's so true. And this year I've had a few moments where it hasn't been fun, and I've been questioning why. And it's generally when things go up on YouTube and nobody watches them, and I think, why did I do that if nobody wanted to watch it? I enjoyed doing it, but just obviously nobody else did. And I think that's one of the things is, if you're modelling, do it because you enjoy it, not because anybody else tells you it's the right thing. And YouTube is especially bad at that. If you put it on Instagram and people don't really comment on it, but you had a great day doing it, you had a great day. Take the win. Take the win. I've got 2 model train layouts, Anfield. I don't work on either of them. I can send you one. I'm finding the attic isn't the greatest of places for me because I'm using it as a practice piece and give me somewhere that I can use to test stock. I find the attic is great for housing the layout because it's out the way of the rest of the house, but that's about it. It's too hot for a lot of the year. You can't have people visit because it gets too crowded, and it just is nowhere to work. And also you don't want to be doing work with things that have dust when you've got finished areas, because you're just going to get dust on your finished areas. So once you've reached a certain stage, you don't want to be doing anything messy up there, and that's where it really becomes an issue. Hi Polite, nice to have you back. These people who know actual people's names. Would you say model making is becoming a dire art with the ever-increasing reliance on computer technology and CDI? No. I think there's a resurgence of people wanting to do things with their hands. And I see that more and more. So I went round model shops on Wednesday a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham for a reason, but I just went round and Warhammer was everywhere. And I see, the guys with big channels, doing stuff, terrain. And I love watching terrain channels. It's more coarse than scale modelling because you have to use it. But don't be fooled, they are beautiful models, and the hours they put in and how beautiful. I mean, I'm not into some of the Nurgle, pustule, vomiting, guts hanging out kind of stuff, but they're just so beautiful. And that's mostly men in their 30s and 40s, I would say. 20s, 30s and 40s, with Yoda kids now coming in underneath. So Warhammer, big, and most of the model shops I went to sold some Warhammer somewhere. And places like Forbidden Planet and all the rest of those geeky shops, they all sell some. In fact, Forbidden Planet had Gundam, and Tokyo Toys had Gundam, and everything else in there. And they had quite a few of those type of model kits. So it may not be they're doing model railways. And yes, people are starting to mash things up. And I do love that mashup between technology. I love technology, if I'm honest, and techo. But what you do find is that people are just enjoy working with their hands. There's something really satisfying about working with your hands that just isn't there with looking at a computer screen, much as I love the computer screen. So I don't know, Dunk, what polyurethane foam carving block is, but the stuff that I use for diorama bases does warp. There's 2 types though. The insulation foam that you'll find for lofts and floors is a little bit bendy. It's a bit softer. It's got I suspect, a lower density. The stuff you often buy that I recommend on Amazon, which used to be called Blue Craft Foam, but is now black actually, is denser and it doesn't warp as much. It will still warp, but it is a little bit better. But I don't think they'll be as dense as the one you're talking about. Laurie Calvert has brilliant layouts, doesn't he? Is it a disco smoke machine? Yeah, I can imagine. His steampunk, I've seen that. Yeah, I've got one. I have got one, but it pumps out way too much for mist, and it just kind of becomes a haze. But I think it will. That's why I'm wondering if the vape will give a more controlled amount of smoke. We'll see. Experiments to come, which will all be on the live stream, of course. Tim asked me, with all the names out there for modelling materials, what is your go-to name for reliability on the product? Well, actually, I often don't go for mainstream modelling products. So all of my bases, all of the stuff I've done today, I would use Sculpt Mold for the base because I just like it. You can do homemade if you cheap, cost is an issue, if you want to make it more cheaply. I know Jason Schron does on his, and he uses cellulose fibre insulation, which is easier to get in some countries than others. He's in Canada, and then just mixes it with plaster. So, I would choose the product that works well for me. Targrout, I just use whatever. But if I was to pick certain brands, then I like Woodland Scenic ground foams. I really like the ground foams. I like the colours WWS has for its grass because it has a good range of dead colours. I don't know. I tend to mix and match. I've got a lot of Woodland Scenics. I like knock leaves. So my knock leaves are my favourite because they're easy to pour and they look great and they colour up nicely. I found some paper leaves got a little soggy and the paints ran on them quite badly. So I like knock for leaves. I have a favourite for each product is probably the problem, because I've been around such a long time. I've picked up so many things. And sometimes you pick things up and they work for a while and then you find something better. I never use resins from any of the brands. I always just go to Smooth On or somewhere like that because their resins work well and they're cheaper normally to buy a non-model railway brand resin than it is to buy a model railway boxed up resin. I do like a lot of Woodland Scenics products, so I have quite a lot of them. But I just buy whatever I have. And also, I'm trying more and more not to always use expensive products because a lot of people on YouTube just don't have access to them. So I try and use simple things like PVA, Targrout, sand for quite a lot of stuff. Okay, what have we got? With all the names out there. Speaking of resin pours, have you worked with acrylic resin, not epoxy resin? By the way, love all of your videos, thank you. I've watched them all many times. Hi, Olansky in Berlin. I haven't heard of acrylic resin. I know that actually the ones I use are often urethane resins, not epoxy resins. They're still two-part, but we call them epoxy resins, but actually when you look into them, they're urethane. Epoxies seem to do really badly with water. So the ones that we use are often urethanes. I've not tried acrylic resin. The thing I tried recently was rubber water, and it works well to a point. It's a bit delicate at times, and it's silicone rubber effectively, so it does repel things. But I think it has a great place. My underwater one was it, and it just came away where I had problems a little bit. So I've got reservations, but it worked well, and I'd use it again. And for deep pours, it is so much easier than resin because it's just rubber. It doesn't have the heat that resin does and doesn't shrink or anything. What you pour is what you get. It just sometimes will pull away from things and leave a bubble or something. And yeah, anyway, I haven't tried acrylic resin. I will Google it later. Stephen, stop motion. Time. I'd love to. Just time. Stop motions definitely looks amazing. I haven't seen the Adam Savage diorama made of the maze from The Shining, Chris. I do watch Adam Savage. He did a brilliant one recently on Your Hobby as a Job. Somebody asked him about setting up and he just went, all work after a while is boring. That's just it. It's work. Just understand if you're going to do your hobby as a job, it will become boring to you. And I was like, yep. I haven't seen that one. I watched some of his. I got a bit bored of him organising his tool drawers and stopped watching for a while. But I need to go back and look at it by the sound of it. Right, good evening. Dinner time in Florida. Have you got to that time? Would you do an LV426 and Nostromo? Nostromo is Alien. What's LV426? Just remind me of that. I'm being lack of geek knowledge here, please. I'm not a huge Alien fan. I wouldn't mind the Ripley in her mech thing, you know, her cargo loader. I did love that as a model. Yeah, I've got so many ideas, I'm just not getting through them. Ooh, nebulizers. Sculpture block. I'll have to have a look for that, Dunk. Yeah, I've just bought a new sculptor mould. It's just easier than making your own. Yeah, and Jason is doing an entire layout. You only need a thin skim normally. You can get your foam, if you're doing me, your foam to 90% there, so it's just a thin skim to cover the edges of the foam and give it a bit of rigidity, because foam will dent. Dry ice keeps the fog mist laying down. That's my worry with all the other techniques, is will they keep the fog and mist at the bottom? Well, that's why it needs some experiments, but you'll see all those. I'll have a little bit of a play and show you on a live stream. Epoxy resin can be tricky. Yeah. My early resin is going brown in Virotex Light, so I do know that resin will turn brown. Some of them are actually brown in the bottom before I've even mixed them. That's magic water. Still sets, but it's brown. So for river, it's fine, but if you wanted a crystal clear, I can imagine it would be difficult. If someone is using all the Woodland products, he's probably sponsored. I totally agree. I watched Real Terrain Hobbies get his, and it was interesting. Somebody wrote and said, you know, stop rubbing it in that you've had all these free products. And he was like, I'm just so excited because I've never had anything like this, you know. And I felt for him, because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I actually don't like sponsored ones from somebody who makes you use their products. If they say you can use other products as well, that's great. So if it was for like Woodland Scenics and they don't mind if you use other things, that's perfect. But if they say everything has to be Woodland Scenics, for example, I don't know if they do or not, it's a nightmare, because suddenly you're stuck trying to use products that you don't know, and you have too many products you don't know at once, and then your diorama hits a wall. And I had that with the Knock Advent Calendar. I'd ordered the wrong products. That wasn't on them, that was on me. And so I didn't really have a good ripple product. And I ended up doing resin ripples in the end, which looked great, but it was my 4th or 5th attempt, and it ended up with an extra layer of resin so I could do it. And I knew I could do it because I'd seen it in magazines and on forums and books, but I'd never seen people really do it in YouTube recently. So I knew I could do it, but it took an extra 2 or 3 days I wasn't expecting on that project, because I just couldn't get the ripples to work. And they're in Germany, and I could have asked for them to ship, but I wanted it finished that week. So yeah, sponsored, when you get all those products, double-edged sword. Enjoy your pumpkin pies, Martha. LV46 was the planet. Oh, thanks, Tamsin. I was obviously losing it there. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've got other things that will come first, and I've got a huge list and not enough time. So Alien may come eventually, but not quite yet. Definitely not quite yet. Morning to Australia. They're just getting up over there. 7:30 a.m. Thank you for tuning in. Wow, it's Monday already. Probably only the resin that will stay clear forever is acrylic. I think the rubber water might actually. The trouble is it's too delicate to hold on its own. So if it's encapsulated, I think it'll be fine. But I don't see silicone changing much over time, from what I understand. When I look at it in baths and things, it goes mouldy rather than anything else. But so there we go. Right, we're getting near the end, 6 minutes to go. So I just want to wrap up and say thank you to everybody for coming. Next time, we'll be doing the rest of the Dagobah base and trees. And I'm hoping I'll have got the trees to the stage where they're all ready to go, maybe even painted, because one of the mixes I will use to cover all the jute string will be a paint mix. So there will definitely be a lot of brown next time you come, and I will try and just keep the momentum going on it. I need to do some mist experiments, but next week will be the base, and then the mist will probably come, or next month will be the base. The mist will probably come a little bit later. And again, it might be a couple of days of doing mist experiments, but I've got to build the vape, because you obviously vapes are made for a different angle to when you're, you know, sideways. So you want to have the filler easy to reach when it's on a diorama. So you generally create a different channel. Anyway, whatever. I'm following the Kamui cosplay, how to build your own cosplay smoke thing. And Kamui, Kamui, they have a video on how to do cosplay smoke. And you can buy a lot of cosplay smoke devices. So that's going to be one I'll try. I've got the fog machine. So I will do some tests. Spend a bit of time testing fog, mist, getting it to lay down. I probably won't do dry ice immediately, because it's just gone so quickly and you have to get hold of it. So yeah, we'll have a see. I'm not quite sure where you'd get dry ice from other than a fire extinguisher. I didn't really want to let a fire extinguisher off in the kitchen. Little things. So hi Stephen, you'd like to put modelling videos on your channel other than just trains running, but I'm scared in case someone, yeah, well, I would just say go for it. And, you know, YouTube is not, find some people who you really value the opinions of and listen to their opinions rather than the people on YouTube that you don't know. Over time, you'll get to know your regulars on YouTube, and you might have patrons or whatever, and people will happily chat to you, and you'll come to appreciate their worth. But when you start out, you won't be able to tell the people that know nothing from the people that don't, and they might make comments that just tell you should have done it a different way. So quite often I've done it the way they suggest, and I just prefer the way I do it. Neither's right, neither's wrong. But it's always useful to have ideas from people, but make sure you've got some sane friends that you know who you can chat it through with, rather than just always taking what comes off YouTube and comments. So yeah, but go for it. You know, get it out there. Modelling is fun. Just make sure you have a nice crisp audio and good close-ups, because I've had a lot of comments on those in the past. Brilliant. So where are we? 3 minutes. I look forward to the next one. Thanks, Norm. Take care. Hit the like button on the way out, of course. Yeah. Thanks, guys. I do hope you learnt a lot. Some of you say that you do. I hope you appreciate the new format. Let me know, put it in the comments or whatever. It's an experiment. I'll try and get the lights better so I don't look like I'm yellow. I'm looking at myself now thinking, yellow, just yellow person. So I'll improve the lighting as well. It's because I've actually got a huge chandelier up here that's the only light in the room. So if I want to light the room rather than just me, so I'm not sat in the Stygian depths of hell, it just, yeah. Lighting, so important for camera work, isn't it? I hate it. I'm not that good at it. So anyway, enjoy it and follow me. I do post stuff as I go on Instagram. I have the patrons and YouTube channel members. I have a Discord channel I post to. And then, of course, thank you to my patrons, especially the ones that came on today, and to my moderators. Oh, when I say patrons, I also mean my channel members, because I have YouTube channel members as well. But thank you to my patrons, to Norm, to Digger, and to Timber. Moderators even. Thank you to my moderators, Norm, Digger, and Timber, for the help this evening. I've really appreciated it. Guys, you're awesome. And I will see everyone next time, when we'll be having more exciting trees. Well, you know, scenery. I do scenery. Bound to be a lot of trees in this. And then we'll get on to some other exciting stuff after that. Probably the X-Wing and the figures and that next, just so that we can start working stuff out. And then there's water to come after that, and mist and fog. Backdrops, loads to go still. So loads to keep tuned in for. Thanks guys, and I'm just going to check there's nothing else in the... What gear would be good to start with? Quick question from Adam. Yeah. What gear would be? Well, knives, cutting mats, PVA glue, ruler. It just depends what you're going to be modelling, really. But I can certainly talk about that more in detail on a future live stream. And more railway things, Brian, I will do. I talked at length about it earlier today, that I burnt out on model railroads about halfway through a couple of years ago, and I need to get that love back. But there will be more coming, I promise. I've got a project coming up that will have a lot more railways in it. It just isn't here yet, but it will be coming, don't worry. So that's it. Bye folks, it is 10 o'clock. Thank you for joining, and see you next time. Thank you.